Hi there. Before I bring on Simon Carrington, we have a really fun surprise to share. Today's episode definitely has a Renaissance theme, so some of our vocal fellows are about to sing for you. This piece is by Thomas Morley and celebrates the coming of spring and celebration of being outdoors. So we hope that you get some time in this period of isolation to get outside and enjoy the beauty around us. The singers that you will see singing in this video have lost most or all of their engagements due to this COVID-19 crisis, and we at Choral Arts are doing our level best to continue to pay them for projects to make up for some of these losses they've incurred. So if you enjoy this piece, consider donating to Baltimore Choral Arts so that we can continue to replenish our fund for young singers and ensure that our musical family is taken care of in this time. Now for the music. Please enjoy this Madrigal by Thomas Morley. Now is the month of May.
Now is the month of May, when merry lads are playing. Fa-la-la-la-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Now is the month of May, when merry lads are playing. Fa-la-la-la-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. Fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. The spring-clad all in gladness doth laugh at winter's sadness. The spring-clad all in gladness doth laugh at winter's sadness. And to look back I sobbed, the nymphs tread out the ground. And to look back I sobbed, the nymphs tread out the ground. Why then, why sit we musing, your sweet delight refuse? Why then, why sit we musing, your sweet delight refuse? Say, dainty nymphs, speak, shall we play bonny break? Say, dainty nymphs, speak, shall we play bonny break?
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Music with the Maestro. I'm Anthony Blake Clark, the music director of Baltimore Choral Arts, and with me this week I have one of my very favorite musicians in the entire world, Simon Carrington. Hello, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Blake, and you shouldn't load me up with all those compliments, but it's kind of you anyway. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure the compliments won't end there. Simon Carrington and I met, I guess, in 2013 now in Sartiano, Italy, and I certainly wish that I could be there right now, and I hope that all of our friends in Sartiano are doing well and staying healthy, and having this conversation really makes me think back to those very fun days, and of course the days at the Norfolk conducting workshop as well, and I'm sure that everyone at Yale is doing their best to stay healthy and sane as well. But my goodness, what an interesting time we're in right now.
Yes, both those are cancelled, of course. Sartiano's cancelled. It was supposed to be a sort of big farewell after so many years. And Norfolk just cancelled last week, which for me is very sad because, you get ready for these and it's a great occasion. However, postponed till next year.
Absolutely. Well, so Simon, can you tell me something interesting that you've learned about a particular piece of music during this interesting time? Have you had time to study scores?
Do you mean the one we're going to talk about, or just in general?
In general, anything at all.
Well, let me see. What I have been using the time, I try to use my mornings to think about music. A lot of it is sort of basic stuff like cataloging and making a list of this, that, and the other, trying to assemble ideas for the future in the hope that one of these days we'll actually be able to make music live.
Right.
So I do quite a lot of that. I'm speaking to you from Southwest England, But we also have a house in France, and we've had it many years, and that's where I keep my music. And one of the hardest things, just for me personally, is that we're not able to get over there because we can't leave England, of course. And so I can't be with my scores, which at this time of the year I would normally be. In fact, my program for Norfolk, I would choose that from going into my library there and working out things. And that's not available. So I've had to do as much as I can by using the internet and Spotify and all those good things. The piece I'd suggested we talked about, shall I go on to that now, may
Absolutely, sure.
Is the 40-part motet by Thomas Tallis, which is not, of course, the kind of repertoire which the Baltimore Choral Arts really could do. I think it's fair to say whenever that piece is attempted by large groups of more than one to a part, it doesn't work very well.
No.
But it's a piece which I've always felt that anybody who loves choral music of any sort needs to be aware of, and hopefully being given the opportunity to enjoy it and fall in love with the piece, which I did many, many years ago. And I've done quite a bit with it using students, which is why I thought it might be fun for you and me to talk about.
Certainly. Well, before we actually dive into the piece, so Thomas Tallis, perhaps maybe the first English composer of real permanence since Dunstable, in my somewhat cloudy view of Renaissance music. Tell me what you think about Tallis, and tell me what you think about his music.
Well, there's Tallis, Thomas Tallis and William Byrd, who are probably the two great names from the period. But actually, there is quite a long list of very distinguished English composers from that whole period. Tallis lived a long time, so he had, like Bach, he had time to go through all the changes of writing in Latin for the Catholic Church, and then after the Reformation, switching over and writing in English. Right. I don't think he was quite, Byrd, of course, was so committed as a Catholic Latin Rite composer that he carried on writing in secret, and some of his best known pieces like the masses were written in secret and sung in secret. Tallis seemed to weather the storm and write in both languages pieces of wonderful quality. Tallis is, to me, his overall works, if you look at them, particularly some of the long works. I've done one, now I'm going to forget names, which is embarrassing. Gaudi, Virgo, it's a very long anthem, much longer than Spem and Alium. It's in various sections, it's in for multi-parts. And I did it once with my group in Kansas City. We used to meet there every summer, and we tackled this piece. And it's a fantastic piece. And the great thing about Tallis is that every line he writes, even if it's buried in the middle of the texture, is interesting to sing. And that's what's amazing about the Spem in Alium, the 40-part motet. Because you've only got to look at a score, pick almost any page and look at any of the 40 lines. And they're not just kind of, dare I say, Gabrieli style, where you jump around within a tonic chord. I'm being very, very rude here, but that type of chordy spezzati stuff, you know, the parts leap around, and that's how the motion is achieved. With Tallis, they're melodic lines. Almost all of them melodic lines, which is why it doesn't matter whether you're appointed to be the third choir singing first bass, or whether you're singing top line or whatever, you always have an interesting part, and some of them are exceptionally melodic. So it's an amazing piece. It was written, they say, legend has it that Italian composer Alessandro Striggio came to England with a piece which he was proud of, and it was quite impressive. But the very various feeling around the court of Elizabeth I and went around was that, now I think we can do better than this. And Tallis picked up the challenge. That's the kind of fun part of the story. And he thought, what Striggio can do, I can do better.
Sure.
And then he went into isolation and he came up with this 11-minute masterpiece.
Isn't it so funny? It really is a masterpiece, and it's very monumental, even though it is only 11 minutes. I mean, right. It's 40 parts, 8 choirs of 5 voices. And I mean, so I read about, I think it's called Nonsuch Palace.
Yes.
Was owned by Henry Fitzwilliam. I think it was the largest Renaissance building at the time. And It had some sort of great hall that was sort of hexagonal in nature, and it had balconies. And I wonder if you think that perhaps this is a spatial piece that he wrote for that. I mean, legend has it that might be the place that it was written for, maybe. And
certainly there are sections in it where if you had choirs on one level and choirs on a different level, where they operate in blocks, I mean, you'll hear as the piece goes through that he basically examines or uses almost every technique known to anybody at that time. So
Sure.
you have weaving contrapuntal lines, and then you come to these sections where the choirs operate in blocks, and that would work very, very well with balconies and different levels. I've never been able to do it like that. I first learned this piece when I was a student in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
And David Wilcox, who was the director of the choir at King's College where I sang, of course, he decided to record it in one of the Argo recordings, Decca Argo. And funny enough, I've just obtained recently, they put out complete Argo set of all the recordings by King's College, Cambridge, which is very interesting because a lot of them run during my time, so 1961 to 64. So there's all kinds of things there. Now, David decided to do Spem and Alium with what was called the CUMS, which is the Cambridge University Musical Society. So you had more than one person per part. And we recorded it in King's College, Cambridge, which of course is a fantastic sound, whatever you do in there. But it isn't one on a part, and it suffers slightly from that, although with everything that David Wilcox did, the pacing is wise and the colors, and because they were able to, it was fairly early days of stereophony then, but they went around, so you had it in a semicircle, which is probably the way which is most practical to do it. And that's where I first heard the piece. And then I forgot all about it. And I went away and I did many, many years of King Singering, and we were only 6, so we couldn't do that, although some of your viewers and listeners may know that after my time, the King Singers actually did a multi-track recording of the piece.
Oh, wow.
Which is actually very impressive, I must say. David Hurley, now retired, having sung in the King Singers for longer than me,
Yes.
he did 26 years, but he could float the very high notes. And so they did a multi-track recording, 6 divided into 40, and then some extra parts here and there.
Wow.
But we couldn't do that in my time. And it was when I went, my first teaching job, and I went to the University of Kansas. And I got there into this wonderful choral program, music program generally, and the only thing that troubled me was the standard of sight singing, which seemed to be weak compared to what I was used to in Britain. As people perhaps know, the standard of sight singing in Britain is considered to be perhaps, I don't know, maybe best in the world. We're very good sight readers. And I tried various things to teach my students who I felt they would benefit hugely from learning how to be more confident sight singers. And in the end, I came in my first year there, actually, I came up with this idea that we should do, I had a choir of 40 by chance, that we should do Talis, Spem and Alium. And so I used it as a sight singing tool, which was a wonderfully challenging, but very, very interesting experience. Some of them picked, well, because the great thing is, as I used to say to them, all I do, me, conductor, Maestro, I just stand there in front of you and I beat a slow 4. Everything else is up to you,
right?
And which is true, of course. They have to count their time, and sometimes you've got many, many bars going by, and you have to be able to pitch off what you hear around you or what you see as the next choir is doing it. And there's all kinds of little tricks. And little by little, they learned how to do this. And we then took it on tour to England. And one of my greatest memories of my fairly long career now in choral music is taking my choir, the University of Kansas students, many of whom had never been abroad, and we sang Talis, Spem and Alium several times, most memorably, I think, under the spire of Salisbury Cathedral.
Oh,
and they stood in a big semicircle, and we performed it there, and I shall never forget that. It was a very powerful memory.
Wow. And Salisbury Cathedral has that wonderful baptismal font right in the middle there, and such a huge boomy sound.
That's a good question. I can't remember how we negotiated. We found a spot. I think it was right under the spire where you could stand with 40 people in a big semicircle. And and so we did, on that tour, we sang in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, we sang it in Winchester Cathedral, and we did Spem and Alium in the buildings, roughly speaking, for which it was composed. Wow. And I think that all the students who took part in that, they're not something they'll forget.
That's amazing. So speaking of having to just beat a slow 4 and leave the singers up to their own devices, I just wanted to show the audience why, because this is the score, and as everyone can see, there are quite literally 40 parts all the time, and if there are 5 or 6 entries of different voices across multiple choirs, there's no way that a conductor can accurately sort of give an appropriate cue in which everyone can understand what is being asked of them, right?
Right. And the funny thing, I used to say, you know, don't rely upon me to give you a cue. I'm not going to do that. You have to count your time. Now, of course, some of the fascinating, well, just to describe what happens, interesting, you've got that score there. That's the Oxford edition, Philip
Yes.
Brett, who's my contemporary Cambridge now. And I'm ashamed to say, because I'm not with my library, I've got the CPDL version by Philip Legge, which is
Yes.
good, actually, I must say.
It is.
It's very, very impressive what he's done. And what choirs tend to do, you can chop the score up so that it makes it more practical.
Right.
You can have the first 4 choirs, the second, and so on. And so there are various practical ways of doing a piece. And I think we must have done that because we couldn't have carried that huge great score everywhere.
No, and it's really not practical for the individual singer, is it? I mean, to break it, I think what Philip Legge does is he puts choir 1 and choir 2 together, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah. And it gradually is one of these pieces that gradually begins to make sense. And if you're an experienced singer of Renaissance music, then of course it'll make sense straight away in the sense of what the expressive devices he uses, particularly with dissonance and suspensions and all these things of which Talis and his contemporaries were so brilliant at. They use these dissonances for expressive purposes. And it's absolutely spine-tingling. Now, there are a couple of moments where the conductor does come briefly into his own because the whole thing stops and then starts again, and that's where it gives you a chance to look as if you know what you're doing.
Sure.
Just at 2. Otherwise, it's really the counterpoint rolls along for at least, well, one of the many amazing things about it is that it starts with choir 1. Normally, the way I did it, choir 1 would be on my right. Then it goes around choir 1, choir 2, choir 3, choir 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so your 8th choir is on the conductor's left. And so it starts with first soprano in choir 1, and that choir come in one by one, then adding in the 2nd, and then the 3rd and the 4th, and it works its way round to the 8th choir. And then there is this tutti moment. I may be getting the order of events wrong here, but in measure 40,
it is the 40th,
everybody sings.
I wanted to mention this because isn't it interesting that in the 40th semibreve with 40 voices is the tutti entrance.
It's incredible. And translation is in that moment where I've never put my hope, Spem in Alium, nunquam habui praeter in te, in any other but you. So in you dominate. I know it's Deus Israel. It's just amazing. In that moment, if everything is going well, and sometimes, you know, the thing can collapse and it can be quite embarrassing, actually. I did participate once in an under-rehearsed version, people not experienced enough, and the thing ground to a halt. It can be done, and there's no way you can rescue it. So people have to be confident. And also, and what I loved about it so much was seeing these young Midwest students get the feeling of the melodic lines and being able to gradually get the confidence where they could express themselves, even though they were running across and almost contrary to their neighbor. All things like that. It makes it such it's an adventure, really.
It is.
And when you get to your final goal or your mid-part goal, like this 40th bar we're talking about, those are the kind of things which are just absolutely spine-tingling. And then it suddenly stops and it starts again. Oh.
And then doesn't it go in the opposite direction when it
goes
starts
in the opposite
again?
direction.
Yeah.
Goes 8. And another time I did this piece, I haven't done it many times, but I did it at Yale, actually, in a sort of public rehearsals when Timothy Brown and Clare College, Cambridge came on tour. And they had a concert, a recital at Yale, and I hatched this idea with Tim. And we decided that the following day, because they had time before they went on the next concert, we would put on this public performance, rehearsal performance of the Talis. And very sweetly, actually, Timothy Brown sang the 8th bass in the 8th choir, and I got to conduct. And so it was my students and his students all intermingled. I think altogether we were probably maybe 43 or something of that sort. And that also memorable. Funny, I'm not sure how much rambling I should do here, but there was a very interesting man at Yale who was a jazz professor, Willie Ruff, marvelous musician. And I turned up that afternoon in this church, Christ Church in New Haven, for the rehearsal. and everybody was coming, and I wanted to set out the spaces and so on. And there was Willie sitting there. And I said, "What are you doing here, Willie?" And he said, "I'm come to learn about the Talis 40-part motet, because I've always thought it was one of the great masterworks." And of course, he was correct.
That's an amazing story. And what a great experience for the students and for yourself to be able to have that kind of combined force.
Yes, I think yes, there's something very, well, not very unique, it is unique in performing that sort of piece. There have been various multi-part pieces written since. I don't think any of them quite have the magic of Tallis's Spem and Alium. It's just, funny enough, the tour of England that we did with KU, Kansas Choir, was organized by a doctor friend of mine in England who, one of his favorite pieces, it might have been even another reason why I got the score out, was the Spem and Alium. And he said, any chance you could bring it and perform it? And we did, of course. And at the end of the tour, we had a final lunch where, rather unwisely, after a fair amount of adult beverages, we gave him one final performance, and he sat in the middle. And that was probably not one of our most distinguished performances. But we gave him, as a kind of a thank you for the tour, that score you're holding,
Sure.
the Oxford edition, and all the students wrote in little places, this is where I made a mistake on Wednesday. This is where in Salisbury Cathedral I sang a wrong pitch, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
and
wow.
he used to have this score in his doctor's surgery up on a music stand, to the amazement of anybody coming in.
That is incredible.
Extraordinary piece. And of course, at the end, everybody's piling in. They go the last however many bars it is, everybody's going full on.
Yes, yes. And one of my favorite moments is I think Talis really turns the counterpoint on its head with the second time you stop and you sing the respice part,
Yes.
and there's a different key. I mean, it's sort of like putting on a jetpack.
It is,
and flying into the sky.
C major to A, I think it is.
Yes, A
and
major.
it is a breathtaking moment.
Oh.
And of course, the interesting thing is there have been several recordings of this piece out there. Some conductors decide to make that a big moment, others to make it a very soft entry. And I have to say, the latter is my preferred. I think it's magical if it goes suddenly soft and changes key.
Yes, of course. Well, I think we should just give it a listen now together and see what we make of it.
Yes, hopefully we've at least laid out some of the ideas about how it.
I think so. I think you've done a masterful job at setting us up for listening. So now we'll give it a listen. So that was Thomas Tallis, Spem and Alium, a 40-part motet. Simon Carrington, of course, of King Singers fame, and then later Kansas and Yale, and a number of other distinguished places. Do you have any other final thoughts about this monumental piece?
Well, it's every time I listen to it, it's breathtaking. I think it's something really which it's very difficult, and there are some fine recordings around, but it's very difficult in the end to get the full majesty of it on recording. If you have a magnificent equipment with speakers all over the place, you know, there was that art exhibition. I went to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. There was an exhibition there with a woman, forgotten her name now, but she had 40 speakers, and you walked around. That kind of thing adds a dimension. But to be honest, if you can find a place where somebody is performing this and you know they're good, and you can go and sit in amongst them and listen to this work, that's the way to do it. All I would end is saying that to me, even though I've done ever since I did my teaching, because all through my King Singers days, I did a lot of music of all kinds. But Renaissance music maintains on a peak somewhere, and I shall probably go out always with Renaissance music in programs I put on, because I think it's so important that we see the link, that sort of 500-600 year link between then and now.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you so much for imparting some of your wisdom. And I think you have forgotten more about Thomas Tallis than I have ever known. So I'm really, really thankful to have this conversation. And what fun.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you so much. And join us next week for another edition of Music with the Maestro. Thank you very much.